The legacy begins in the quiet city of Medina. Under the desert sky, where stars shimmer like ancient witnesses, a child was born into the house of prophethood. His name was Hussain. He was not just the grandson of a prophet, he was the beating heart of his mission. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, used to cradle him in his arms, whisper prayers into his ears, and let his tiny feet walk upon his back as he prostrated in prayer. This was not mere affection, it was destiny being cradled in human hands. To understand Hussain, one must first understand who he came from. He was the son of Imam Ali, the courageous guardian of Islam, and Lady Fatima, the most beloved daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He was raised not just in a home of faith, but in a house of divine light, where truth was not just preached, it was lived. The Prophet, peace be upon him, once said, "Hussain is from me and I am from Hussain." These were not just words of love, but a declaration. The message of Islam and the mission of Hussain would forever be intertwined. Hussain grew up watching his father defend truth not with mere words, but with patience and sacrifice. He witnessed how justice required silence when it was unbearable, and courage when it was dangerous. He saw how the world could turn against righteousness, yet how righteousness could still stand unshaken. His mother, Fatima, left this world early, her departure wrapped in sorrow, and the injustice that followed left its scars upon the house of Ali. But Hussain bore all this with a strength that did not harden the heart it softened for the suffering of others. Years passed. The Prophet, peace be upon him, had left this world, and with him went the era of divine guidance walking among men. Power shifted. The simplicity of the Prophet's mosque gave way to palaces. The humility of faith was replaced by the arrogance of rulers who wore the cloak of Islam but whose hearts had long turned away from its spirit. The caliphate, once a trust, became a throne. Hussain saw it all silently, patiently, painfully. He did not seek power. He did not seek rebellion. He was a man of prayer and principle, often found under the shade of palm trees, speaking with the poor, feeding the hungry, and raising his hands to the sky in the stillness of the night. Yet history was preparing to call his name. It was during the reign of Muawiyah that things began to shift openly. Though there were already deep cracks in the structure of justice, Muawiyah had managed to hold power through politics and force. But as he neared his death, he did something that struck at the heart of Islamic leadership. He appointed his son, Yazid, as his successor. Yazid was everything the Prophet, peace be upon him, warned against: arrogant, cruel, obsessed with wealth and power. Known for his drinking, his open disobedience to the teachings of Islam, and his unrestrained tyranny, he symbolized the very decay that the Prophet, peace be upon him, had struggled to protect his community from. And now he was to be crowned as the leader of the Muslims, to legitimize his rule. Yazid needed one thing: the allegiance of Hussain. The letter arrived in Medina. It was short, commanding, and heavy with threat. The governor of Medina summoned Hussain to his palace in the dead of night. He offered him two choices: give your allegiance to Yazid or face the consequences. Hussain stood not as a rebel, but as a servant of truth. He refused, quietly, calmly, unshaken. How can a man like me give allegiance to a man like him? His voice echoed in the governor's chamber. This was no act of pride. It was principle. Hussein knew what Yazid represented, and to bow to him would be to hand over Islam to the hands of corruption. It would mean allowing the name of the Prophet, peace be upon him, to be used as a banner by those who trampled on his teachings. That night, Hussein returned home. But there was no rest. There was no sleep. There was only the silence of preparation. He knew what was coming. And yet he did not raise an army. He did not call for swords. Instead, he gathered his family, his brothers, his sons, his nephews, even his little daughter Sakina, and began to prepare for a journey. The sun rose over Medina, and its people watched as Hussein left the city, not as a warrior, but as a pilgrim. His caravan moved slowly, away from the city of his grandfather, toward Makkah, the house of God. But this was not a pilgrimage of worship. It was a pilgrimage of protest, a peaceful migration away from oppression. In Makkah, the sacred city, pilgrims from across the Muslim world gathered. Hussein's presence was a storm hidden beneath still waters. Letters began to pour in from a city called Kufa, thousands of them. "Come to us, O son of the Prophet," they said. "We do not want Yazid, we want you. Lead us. We will protect you." The invitations were not mere words. They were cries of hope in a world where justice had been drowned by power. Hussein read the letters with caution, but also with responsibility. He did not desire leadership, but he could not abandon those who looked to him for truth. Still, he was careful. He sent his cousin, Muslim ibn Aqil, to Kufa to assess the situation. Muslim arrived and was greeted by thousands, hope in their eyes, loyalty on their lips. It seemed the people were ready. Hussein received Muslim's letter. "Come, the people are with you." The decision was made. He would go, but in the shadows danger was growing. Yazid's spies were everywhere. The sacredness of Makkah no longer offered safety. The Kaaba was not safe from bloodshed. Assassins had been sent. Yazid wanted Hussein dead, even if it meant murdering him in front of the Kaaba itself. Hussein was told, "Leave Makkah, or your blood will be spilled during Hajj." And so, before the day of Eid, Hussein left Makkah, not dressed in the white robes of pilgrims, but in the armor of dignity. The path ahead was uncertain, the risk undeniable, but his heart was firm. With his family and a handful of companions, he moved toward Kufa. But he was not seeking power. He was seeking something far greater, a stand, a line, a voice in a world that had gone silent. A living sermon in the form of sacrifice. As the desert winds blew and the heat rose, Hussein's caravan marched forward, not toward a palace, but toward history, toward a place where thirst would not just touch the tongue, but the soul, toward Karbala. But Karbala had not yet arrived. Before the dust of its tragedy could rise, news came. A messenger, pale and shaking, approached the caravan. "Muslim ibn Aqil has been killed," he said. "The people of Kufa have betrayed you. The roads are closed. The army awaits you. There is no support ahead." Silence fell. The faces of the children grew pale. The men looked to Hussein, but he did not turn back. He gathered his companions under the night sky and gave them the chance to leave. "They are not after you," he said. "They are after me. You are free to go." But they stayed. Why? Because this was not a caravan of politics. It was a caravan of truth. And truth, once awakened, does not return to sleep. The desert stretched out ahead, and with it, the footsteps of Hussain, the grandson of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the son of Ali, the soul of Fatima, the last light of dignity in a world slipping into darkness. And he kept walking toward Karbala, the desert of no return. The wind shifted. The air had grown heavier. Hussain stood under the vast desert sky, the sand swirling gently at his feet, as the messenger finished delivering the devastating news. Muslim Ibn Aqil was killed, betrayed, abandoned, executed in the streets of Kufa, the very city that had showered him with letters, with pledges, with promises. A man who was sent as Hussein's trusted envoy now lay in the earth of a city that once called itself loyal. For a long moment there was no sound, only the faint whisper of desert wind. Imam Hussain did not weep, not because he did not feel the pain, but because his heart had long been prepared to carry the weight of the world. He looked around at his companions, his brothers, his sons, the children, the women, the elderly, and though the journey had grown darker, his light only grew stronger. He called his followers together and gave them the chance to turn back. In the stillness of night, lit only by stars and flickering lanterns, his voice rose gently. Those who remain with me shall surely face death. But know this, I release you of any pledge. You are free to go. No shame shall come upon those who leave, but no one left. Even the youngest among them, like Qasim, son of Imam Hussain, a mere teenager, stepped forward with unwavering resolve. The women, to Zainab, the sister of Hussain, carried not only grief but a fire of defiance in her soul. These were not travelers any more. They were witnesses. They were history walking into destiny. The caravan pressed on, moving slowly through the arid plains. As they neared the outskirts of Kufa, the path narrowed, and soldiers began to appear on the horizon. But they did not come to join him, they came to stop him. Umar ibn Sa'd had been sent with an army by the governor of Kufa under Yazid's orders. The message was clear: do not let Hussain reach Kufa, and do not let him return. Hussein's caravan was diverted, surrounded, outnumbered. Eventually, they were stopped at a barren, forsaken land by the banks of the Euphrates River, a place known as Karbala. It was the 2nd of Muharram, a day heavy with fate. The land was dry, the sun merciless. And yet this would be the final resting place for the family of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Hussain looked over the land and said, "This is the place where our blood will be spilled. This is where we shall be buried." He ordered the tents to be pitched. He smiled at the children. He stood beside his brother Abbas, but within his heart he had already seen the shadows of what was to come. Day by day, the enemy encampment grew. 10,000, 20,000. Some say 30,000 soldiers surrounded Hussein's caravan of barely 72 companions, many of them children and elderly. But Yazid's fear was not of numbers. It was of the truth that stood in front. Of him silent, fearless, and radiant. Then came the first cruelty: water. On Yazid's orders, access to the Euphrates River was blocked. The heat of the sun, the dryness of the desert, and now thirst. The women and children began to cry. Sakina, barely 4 years old, looked up at her father and whispered, "Father, why is there no water?" But Hussain said nothing to Yazid's. army. Instead, he raised his hands to the sky. Even as thirst burned their tongues, their spirits remained unshaken. And when some among the enemy saw the children suffering, they wept. Some even defected, unable to bear the injustice. But most remained silent, bound by fear or blinded by allegiance. The days passed, and with every rising sun, the pressure increased. The enemy sent word, "Pledge allegiance to Yazid, or we will attack." And here, at the heart of it all, was the question that the world must understand. Why didn't Hussein give allegiance? He could have lived. He could have saved his family. All he had to do was raise his hand, speak the words, and bow to Yazid. But a man like Hussein could not bow to falsehood. His silence would have meant agreement. His pledge would have meant surrendering the soul of Islam to a tyrant. He said, "A man like me cannot give allegiance to a man like him." That was not politics. It was a statement of faith. This was not a power struggle. It was a choice between truth and falsehood, between standing and surviving, between dignity and disgrace. And Hussein chose dignity. He sent messengers to the enemy camp to request just one thing: "Let us go. We will not fight. We do not want war. Let us return, or let us go to a distant land. I will not cause unrest." But Yazid did not want peace. He wanted submission. And if not submission, then the blood of Hussein. The night before the attack, the night of Ashura, was unlike any other. The camp of Hussein was alive with prayer, with whispers, with quiet tears, with the rustle of swords being sharpened, not for victory, but for martyrdom. Hussein walked through the tents, comforting the children, holding Sakina in his arms, telling her bedtime stories with a voice that trembled but never broke. He stood beneath the sky, and his voice rose in the darkness. "O Allah, I have left my home, abandoned my land, and brought my family into the desert, only to revive your religion and to protect the dignity of your message." On the other side of the battlefield, there was noise, drums, threats, and weapons. But here, in Hussein's camp, there was peace. As the stars dimmed and the night faded into dawn, Hussein gathered his companions. He looked into their eyes, knowing many of them would not live beyond the day. He thanked them, not as a leader to soldiers, but as a brother to brothers, as a man humbled by loyalty. Among them stood elderly men, warriors of faith. Young men like Ali Akbar, Hussein's own son, whose face resembled the Prophet, peace be upon him. And then there were the children, some too young to hold swords, but not too young to hold courage. And when the sun rose on the 10th of Muharram, the world would never be the same again. The battle began with the enemy charging. One by one, the companions of Hussein rode out not to conquer, but to sacrifice. They fell, one after another, calling out Hussein's name with their final breath. Ali Akbar asked his father's permission to fight. Hussein looked at him, the pupil of his heart, and gave him a farewell only a father of truth could give. Ali Akbar rode into the battlefield with a voice that shook the hearts of the enemy, and when he fell, Hussein ran to him, cradled his broken body, and cried, "Oh, my son, after you what joy remains in life?" Then came Qasim, the young son of Imam Hussain. Barely a teenager, he begged to fight. Hussein hesitated, but Qasim held a letter from his father, written long ago, asking Hussein to allow him when the day came. Qasim rode out, barefoot, and was killed before the enemy could even comprehend his bravery. Even Abbas the flag-bearer, the lion of Karbala, fought only for water. He broke through enemy lines, reached the river, and filled a water bag for the children, but he never drank. Loyalty lived in his veins more than water. He returned toward the camp, but was ambushed. His arms severed, his body crushed. Hussain ran to him and cried, "Now my back is broken." And yet, still Hussain did not surrender. By afternoon, only a few remained. The children huddled in the tents, their lips dry, their eyes wide. The bodies of brothers, sons, and nephews lay scattered in the dust. But the enemy wanted more. They wanted the heart of resistance to stop beating. Imam Hussain looked around. He was alone, yet never had he been more surrounded. By honor, by truth, by the echo of the Prophet's words. Hussain is from me, and I am from Hussain. And now the sun began to descend, casting long shadows across the blood-stained land of Karbala. The last stand, the son of Ashura, began to descend, but the flames of Karbala rose higher with every heartbeat. The ground, once silent and bare, was now soaked in blood, and echoing with cries, some of anguish, others of triumph. All around him, Imam Hussain stood amidst the fallen, his family, his dearest friends, his loyal companions, scattered like stars that had fallen to the earth. The wind carried the dust of death. It also carried the silence of courage. He looked around. Where once stood the flag of Abbas, there was none. Where once smiled the youthful face of Ali Akbar, there was only a lifeless body pressed into the dust. Where once the laughter of children, like Qasim and Aoun, could be heard in the tents, now there was only weeping. The tents trembled with the sound of crying women, children, and little Sakina calling out for their fathers, uncles, brothers. But Hussain could not answer every cry. He had buried too many dreams already. He turned his gaze upward to the burning sky, his lips moving in prayer. "O Allah," he whispered, "I have done everything I could. I have sacrificed all that I have. Let this stand of mine awaken hearts until the end of time." And then from the enemy camp came the final summons. They wanted him now. They wanted the grandson of the Prophet, peace be upon him. They wanted to silence the last voice of dignity. But Hussain, even in loneliness, was not weak. He rode his horse Iljana one final time. His armor dented, his turban dusty, his body exhausted. But in his eyes there was light, unwavering and ancient, the same light that once shone in the Prophet's peace be upon him gaze. He turned to the enemy army and delivered his final sermon, a speech not of anger, but of heartbreaking truth. "O people, do you not know who I am? Have I harmed you? Have I betrayed this religion? I am the grandson of your Prophet, the son of Ali and Fatima. I am only here because you summoned me. Yet, now, you draw your swords upon me." Some among the enemy lowered their eyes, others wept. Even their horses refused to move forward. But their commanders, the lovers of power, forced them onward. Still, Hussain offered them peace. "Leave me," he said. "Let me go. I do not wish to rule. I do not wish to fight." But they did not want peace. They wanted his submission, and Hussain would never bow. The first arrow was fired, then another, then 100 more. The battlefield once again rumbled. Imam Hussain fought bravely alone. The reports say he fought like his father Ali at Badr, The soldiers of Yazid, though many, dared not approach him in close combat. They circled him like cowards, striking from afar, raining arrows upon him. His body bled from every side. His horse, Zuljana, whinnied in pain, sensing its master was fading. The battlefield fell into a terrifying stillness as Imam Hussain, struck with many wounds, stood atop the bloodied earth, his back straight, his chest open, ready to face destiny. Then came the final strike. A three-pronged arrow, fired from a distance, tore through his sacred chest. Hussain fell to the ground, but he did not fall in defeat. He fell in triumph. He fell in prayer. As his body touched the earth of Karbala, he whispered, "O Allah, accept this humble sacrifice." Zuljana returned to the tents without its rider. Sakina, seeing the horse without her father, screamed, "Where is my Baba?" The women rushed outside. But it was over. The swords had silenced the body, but not the message. The army of Yazid approached the fallen Imam. None dared to strike the final blow. Then Shimar stepped forward, the most heartless of them all, and severed the head of the grandson of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the son of Fatima, the last beacon of divine resistance. And so the desert of Karbala became the holiest ground on earth. But the tragedy did not end with death. It had only begun. The silence after the storm, the tents were looted. The women veils were snatched. The orphans were beaten. Zainab, the sister of Hussain, stood firm. She gathered the children, consoled Sakina, and stared into the faces of Yazid soldiers with the fire of Fatima in her eyes. The heads of the martyrs were placed on spears, and the journey of humiliation began from Karbala to Kufa, from Kufa to Damascus. Yet this was no ordinary caravan. This was the caravan of the survivors, the caravan of the message. Zainab became the voice of Hussain. In the court of Ibn Ziyad she stood tall. In the palace of Yazid she did not tremble. She declared, "I see nothing but beauty in the sacrifice of my brother." The people of Damascus watched these prisoners with awe. Many had never heard the true story. Many thought Hussain was a rebel. But when they saw the bruises on the children, when they heard Zainab speak, when they learned the truth, their hearts changed, and the world began to awaken. The echo that never fades. Hussain did not die on Ashura. His body was taken, but his voice lives. His blood mixed with the sands of Karbala, and from that soil grew the garden of freedom. His thirst quenched the souls of millions. His sacrifice became the turning point in history, where faith confronted tyranny, where love stood against cruelty, and where truth refused to kneel. Imam Hussain was not a warrior seeking a throne. He was a servant of God defending a trust. He was the grandson of a prophet, peace be upon him, who rose not to fight, but to awaken. Why Hussain still lives more than 1,300 years have passed, and still the name Hussain lives on every tongue, in every land, in every language. Why? Because he did not fight for land. Because he did not raise his sword for revenge. Because he did not remain silent when silence meant betrayal. He stood so that generations would remember how to stand. He died thirsty so that hearts could be nourished with truth. He sacrificed everything, not to build an empire, but to save a message. He is remembered in whispers and in weeping, in poetry and in passion, in the black flags of mourning and the red banners of resistance. Imam Hussein's story is not just a chapter of Islamic history. It is a mirror. It asks, What do you stand for? It whispers, when the world sells its soul, will you stay silent? It challenges, will you live like Yazid, or will you die like Hussain? And it answers, every land is Karbala, every day is a Shura, and Hussain still rides